Google Cloud outage caused by invalid API quota update, a DevOps Postmortem. Imagine it's June 12, 2025. You're scrolling through your feed when you notice the internet is starting to buckle under its own weight. It isn't just a local glitch or a single app acting up. It's a massive, systemic collapse of the infrastructure that holds the modern web together. By 1745 UTC, a silent poison was injected into Google's API management system, and within seconds, it replicated globally. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Major platforms like Spotify, Discord, and Cloudflare were suddenly reeling as external requests began getting flat-out rejected. For some services, the blackout dragged on for over 7 hours, effectively severing the connection between millions of users and the tools they rely on every second. Something fundamental in the core of Google Cloud had snapped, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction that didn't just break a few features, it threatened to unplug a significant portion of the internet. Imagine you're running a massive digital empire. You need to manage millions of requests, and for that, you rely on Google Cloud, the heavy lifting backbone for some of the biggest names on the internet today. Think of it as the ultimate gatekeeper. Its service control system handles things like API management and policy checking to keep everything running smoothly. But on June 12, 2025, that gate didn't just stick. It slammed shut for everyone. Because Google Cloud sits at the foundation of the web, when their internal systems started failing, it triggered a massive domino effect. It wasn't just a minor glitch in a niche app. It crippled major platforms like Spotify, Discord, and Cloudflare. When the core infrastructure that manages how services talk to each other breaks, the entire internet starts to feel the tremor. For some users, the lights didn't come back on for over 7 hours. In the world of hyperscale infrastructure, normal is a state of invisible perfection. For Google Cloud, that meant managing a massive global ecosystem where service control handled the heavy lifting of API management and policy checking. Everything seemed stable until a new feature for additional quota policy checks was introduced on May 29. It was supposed to be a routine enhancement, but it arrived without proper error handling or the safety net of a feature flag. On June 12, 2025, at 10:45 a.m. PT, the system received an automated quota update containing blank fields in the policy data. Because there was no validation gate to stop it, this dirty data replicated globally in mere seconds. It didn't just cause a local glitch, it sent the API management binaries into a catastrophic crash loop, effectively pulling the plug on external requests and setting the stage for a massive, multi-platform meltdown. It started with a silent poison in the system. On June 12, 2025, at exactly 1745 UTC, an automated quota policy update hit Google's service control system. It wasn't just a minor glitch. It was a toxic payload of blank fields that slipped through without any feature flag protection or proper error handling. Within seconds, the change replicated globally, and the API management binaries began to choke, spiraling into a frantic crash loop. By 1749 UTC, the first alarms screamed as the fallout hit the real world. Suddenly, the infrastructure supporting massive platforms like Discord and Spotify started buckling under the weight of rejected requests. For the engineers on the front lines, the data was clear. The core systems were choking on their own configuration. It wasn't just a local hiccup, it was a systemic collapse that began to ripple across the entire internet within minutes. It started with a single, silent poison in the well, an automated quota update to Google's service control system. Because this feature lacked proper error handling and was missing a protective feature flag, it didn't just fail locally, it radiated outward like a digital contagion. At 10:45 a.m., PT on June 12, 2025, that malformed policy riddled with blank fields was replicated globally in mere seconds. The API management binaries hit those empty fields and immediately entered a death spiral, crashing over and over again. By 49 AN. PT, the dominoes were falling across the entire ecosystem. It wasn't just an internal hiccup, it was a systemic collapse where external requests were being flat-out rejected. This forced a massive ripple effect that crippled major third-party platforms like Spotify and Discord, turning a localized code bug into a global infrastructure meltdown that took hours to untangle. So, what actually broke the gears of this machine? It all traces back to a flaw in service control, Google's internal system for managing API policies. Back on May 29th, they introduced a new feature for extra quota policy checks, but it was born with a critical structural weakness. It lacked proper error handling and had no protection behind a feature flag. This became a ticking time bomb when an automated quota update hit the system at 1745 UTC on June 12th. Because that specific update contained blank fields in its data, the API management binaries didn't know how to process it. Instead of gracefully failing or ignoring the empty fields, the software panicked and entered a relentless crash loop. Within seconds, this corrupted configuration replicated globally, effectively bricking the ability for external requests to get through and triggering a massive domino effect across the entire infrastructure. When a core infrastructure piece like Google's service control fails, the blast radius doesn't just hit one house, it levels the entire neighborhood. On June 12, 2025, an invalid automated quota update missing critical error handling and feature flag protections rippled through the system in seconds. This wasn't a localized glitch. It was a global contagion that crippled Google Cloud Platform services and slammed into third-party giants like Spotify, Discord, and Cloudflare. While some systems began to stabilize after a red button rollback, the fallout was uneven. For several critical services, the outage dragged on for over 7 hours. Even as workspace tools like Gmail and Drive were reported back online by 1953 UTC, the full restoration of all affected products wasn't completed until 2018 UTC. In a matter of hours, a single corrupted data field turned into a massive, multi-service blackout that effectively unplugged segments of the internet. When the alarms started screaming at 17:49 UTC on June 12, the SRE team didn't have much time to wonder why. They were looking at a massive, global failure where API management binaries were caught in a relentless crash loop. The culprit was an automated quota update that had propagated across the globe in seconds, carrying blank fields that the system simply couldn't swallow. Within 10 minutes of the initial spike, the team pinpointed the rot within the service control system. They weren't just fighting a bug. They were fighting a systemic collapse caused by missing feature flags and poor error handling. By 1810 UTC, they hit the red button to initiate a rollback, while simultaneously working to bypass the offending quota checks. While most regions saw stability return within 2 hours, some services remained in the trenches for over 7 hours before finally being fully restored by 2018 UTC. When the SRE team finally pinned down the root cause, they realized exactly where the gears had jammed. The service control system was choking on a botched, automated quota update that lacked proper error handling and feature flag protection. To stop the bleeding, the team executed a red button rollback to strip out the malformed configuration. By bypassing the offending quota check entirely, they managed to stabilize most regions within 2 hours of the initial 79 UTC spike. While some services spent over 7 hours in limbo, the core fix was about isolating that faulty logic so it couldn't propagate globally again. Moving forward, the goal shifted toward hardening the system against dirty data, ensuring that no blank fields or corrupt metadata can ever trigger a crash loop in the API management binaries. It was a hard-won lesson in why critical infrastructure needs guardrails before it goes live to millions. Look, the big takeaway here isn't just about a bug, it's about the terrifying speed of automated propagation. When that invalid quota update hit at 17:45 UTC on June 12, it didn't sit in a queue, it replicated globally within seconds. We see a classic case where missing safety nets like feature flags and robust error handling turned a minor data glitch into a massive crash loop for the service control binaries. If your system can't handle a blank field without exploding, you haven't built a resilient gatekeeper, you've built a landmine. The real lesson is that in a hyperscaler ecosystem, any failure in core infrastructure, like API management, creates a domino effect that can brick third-party services for hours. You have to assume the data coming in will be malformed and ensure your system fails gracefully, rather than taking everyone else down with it. Trust the automated systems, but never let them run without a kill switch. That's how Google Cloud turned a very bad day into a lesson. If this saved you an outage, subscribe for the next postmortem.